Hello, my friends, and welcome, 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 finally, at long last, to Mary Trump's Nerd Avengers. I'm so thrilled that you're here with us. And even more importantly, I'm so happy that we're starting up this incredible venture once again. These are tough times, and we all need to hang in there together. And the nerds and I are going to be with you for the duration through the election and beyond. So, you know what? Let's kick it off and let's bring in the people you're really here to see, my fellow Nerd Avengers. Wow, look at those faces. This is so
Oh, wow.
exciting.
Hi
Cool.
guys.
I can't remember last time I was this happy. Hi everybody. It's really incredible to see you, especially it's been a very long time coming, and it's just very exciting to have an incredible new team helping us out, and we have a new home, Mary Trump Media, which is just amazing, because it's going to give us all sorts of flexibility and freedom to do the kinds of things that corporate media either can't do or doesn't want to do. So let's just dive right in. And I also, if you're up for it, when you start, if you could just fill us in a little bit, let everybody know how you're doing, because I'm telling you, people really miss you guys. It's not just me missing you; it's a whole bunch of other people out there.
We missed you too.
So I'm sure everybody wants to know your present status, and I do want to start. I know that conceptually, the trial in New York is important. That doesn't mean that every single aspect of the trial in New York is important. We will, don't worry, we're totally going to get to it in depth later on and throughout the course of the trial, the rest of the trial, and hopefully other trials of Donald's if they ever start. But as some of you may know, SCOTUS is starting to drop its rulings, and there were a couple of big ones today. And one, I have to confess, really confused me, because it seemed like it was good news, but the three quote unquote liberal justices dissented. So now I'm worried. So Delia, I wanted to start with you. One, it's amazing to see you. How are you? And what's going on?
So it's so good to be back, and it's so good. I feel like I'm like back at a dysfunctional family dinner. Like I'm just loving the like energy of being with all my like broken siblings. It's great to see everybody. We've been working at Slate for the last 2 weeks on this big originalism package, which I cannot tell you, like months in the making. And I think I just want to start by saying, it just was ridiculous how dumb originalism is. Like whatever vestigial part of me thought like, hey, maybe Robert Bork was onto something, hey, maybe Justice Scalia had some fiber of integrity. Like it's all garbage, and whatever respect I ever had for it is gone. And we can talk about that. But I think I just want to start by saying I know we were going to talk about it in a second, and Jen can tee us off, but the CFPB case that came down earlier today is literally Jackson Pollock of originalism. We have a majority opinion by Justice Thomas, thank God, salvaging the CFPB, which we'll live to see another day. Huge win for the Biden administration, huge win for consumers. But then we have Elena Kagan doing a little originalism of the 19th and 20th century. And then we have spin the wheel originalism from Justice Alito dissenting. He and Gorsuch dissent. And they're like, let's talk about like King Charles and King James. So it turns out originalism is just about where your history wheel stops, and then you make your argument. It is the most like on its face, good decision, good result. We can't all be originalists now because we don't agree on a century. I'm out.
I do think that is a consensus that's necessary, and I don't think the centuries go back far enough for Alito, quite frankly. So that's a very good point.
Needs to go back to the Inquisition to be good for Alito, but that's
Mary, can I jump in just to like counterbalance Dahlia's ethereal intelligence on this sort of theoretical level and bring it down to what I do best, which is nuts, bolts, follow the money. This is a case, yes, it's about, as Dahlia said, salvaging the CFPB, an incredibly important consumer agency, and a very weird homage to a variety of forms of originalism. But let me tell you, what is a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? It's an agency from 2020 established by the Dodd-Frank Act that has already, in that time frame, returned over $20 billion to cheated consumers.
Wow.
Banks, that's as of January of this year. Banks and financial firms hate it. They've been gunning for it since day one. Since it was stood up a year later in 2021. But specifically, what they thought they were challenging in this case, or what they started to challenge, is this is payday lenders. You know, payday lenders, the people who prey upon people who are not even living paycheck to paycheck, but can't even live day to day between paychecks. And there was a rule the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau put out to try to regulate them. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but it was trying to help consumers, the most vulnerable of us. And so the payday lenders challenged not just that rule, but the entire CFPB, the entire funding structure. And this is why this is a big fucking deal. As you may know, Elizabeth Warren, and I'm going to wrap this up, Elizabeth Warren created the Bureau to make it withstand the sort of, slings and arrows of a Congress that might be, pro-bank versus one pro-consumer. So built into this statute is this very unique funding mechanism where the CFPB gets its money from the Fed, doesn't have to beg with its cup out to Congress every year. Mm-hmm. And they said that was unconstitutional. And 7-2, the Supreme Court said no. Huge news. Great for the, for federal agencies designed to protect consumers. And now I'm out.
Well, the Supreme Court, quite frankly, thinks that anything they don't like is unconstitutional. So there you have it. Let's just stop for a second. Norm is here. Norm.
Hey, Norm.
Hey, Norm.
So happy to see you. How are you doing?
Norm.
I will tell you, I got COVID yesterday.
What?
And it was the first time. I had not had it before. I'd escaped it for 4 years. And I just thank heaven that I took all of these booster shots, including the most recent one. And we know that the vaccines do not prevent your getting COVID, but they keep it from getting severe. So I thought I just had a really awful cold, but it turned out to be something else. And I'm good enough to be here today to rant with all the rest of you.
Well, that makes me extremely happy. When you said you had COVID, it made me feel lonely because I too haven't had COVID yet, but most importantly, worried because it's still a thing. No matter how much people want to think it's not. So I'm so happy that you're here and feeling okay. And I'm very curious if the two latest Supreme Court decisions made you feel better or worse.
Well, I was gobsmacked that Clarence Thomas,
like a shruggy emoji,
and not surprised that Sam Alito was in the opposition. But it's the a stop clock could be right twice a day kind of thing, I guess. But I do think there's something that has really got me riled up today beyond anything the Supreme Court could do, and that's racist, fascist Greg Abbott, who just pardoned a murderer, a cold-blooded racist murderer who announced his racist intentions, drove his car into a Black Lives Matter protest, got out and shot an individual in cold blood, a military veteran who legally was carrying a gun, but did not point it at anybody. He just got out and shot him in cold blood. And it's not only that Greg Abbott has let very likely many innocent people go to their deaths because he wouldn't pardon them, but that he announced before the trial that he was going to pardon this guy. And we're waiting for the NRA and the other advocates for the Second Amendment to express its outrage. But of course, they only express their outrage when it's a white guy with a gun. So it's another manifestation of the sickness that we have in parts of our society and in a Republican Party. And it's just hard for me to imagine that any Black person could vote for a party that would act this way. It actually, I have to say, reminds me of what Ben Gvir has done with the vigilante settlers in the West Bank, murdering people, terrorizing people, burning down houses, and nothing happens to them. And this is what happens when you have a party that's gone completely to the dark side.
Yeah, Norm, I think it just sort of reminds me that we get focused on, and I don't want to say distracted because there's a lot of important stuff going on. Whatever the Supreme Court does is extremely important, even though there's a lot of nonsense in this New York trial, and I think a lot of people are focusing on the wrong aspects of it. It is important, especially, and we'll talk about this later, a lot of this stuff going on outside of the courtroom. But there is so much else flying under the radar, and we forget that much of the horrors, many of the horrors, and much of what we need to be worried about heading into the election is happening in the state level. And why Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis haven't been arrested for kidnapping across state lines, first of all, is beyond me. But Greg Abbott is at the leading edge of rule by psychopath. The guy is beyond redemption, and I'm not quite sure why that's not getting more attention. And plus, everything that's happening with the border and the Supreme Court essentially is saying that, Texas is its own city state and can do whatever it wants. No, damn the federal government. So there really are so many things to be focused on, and it's hard sometimes, which is why we can't not acknowledge it, because we need to be arm ourselves with as much knowledge and as many facts as we can. But we also can't let ourselves get overwhelmed by it, and that's what I found is the tricky part, and that's what one of the many reasons I need you guys. But I do, Dolly, want to shift back to the is it not gerrymandering? The decision about Louisiana and how the Supreme Court overruled the Fifth Circuit, is that right? And decided to allow those two Black majority districts to that map with the two Black majority districts to go back into effect. And as I said earlier, on the surface of things, that sounds like good news. However, should it give me pause that the three dissenters were Kagan, Sotomayor, and Brown?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Jackson. Damn it.
The upshot is this is another shadow docket. We don't actually, right? This is not regular order. This is a case that pops out last night. And you're exactly right. The court essentially said, for purposes of this election, we're going to let this second district stand, the map stand, but then they reserve the right to go back and scupper the whole thing in the future. And the merits case underneath it, which is a challenge to the Voting Rights Act, is absolutely still alive. And so what you're seeing, I think, from the three liberal justices is we can't do election law this way. We can't create districts, uncreate them, say that the Purcell principle gets us too close to the election, except for when it doesn't, but now we're too close, but we're too far. There's no coherent law here. And what it means is the court is constantly inventing the voting rights plane as it's in the air. And so I think what you're seeing from the liberals is this only, gets us through the very, very near term future. It doesn't resolve the underlying problem. And B, that this is not a system that we can count on come November when the election comes and the court's upholding some districts and, shooting down others. And this is how, exactly how we got into trouble in the 2020 election, where the court is inventing new rules and saying, this map stands, this one doesn't. This is just, we need a coherent system. And the notion that the court is just fiddling around with this as they go on the shadow docket, I think is deeply destabilizing. That's, I think, the bad news under a very, very good decision, because it will mean that there's a second seat.
Yeah, so at least, through November, that helps us. But Dean, first of all, it's great to see you.
Nice to see you.
Catch us up a little bit. And then I also want to just have you comment on any of the Supreme Court stuff
Sure.
you want to comment on, but also just looking at this one decision and the quote unquote liberal, just because I think liberal and conservative don't work anymore, but quote unquote liberal justices, as Dahlia said, making some very good points and raising some very vital red flags here. It seems to be in general, that this is just a tactic on the right now. Mitch McConnell did it with Supreme Court justices. No, wait, it can't be an election year. Oh, yes, wait, hold on. It can be 30 seconds before the election. So they're it just seems that the fact that there are no rules that they're willing to follow, because if it suits them, that's just the way it is. Like, that is the rule now.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm ecstatic that the Consumer Financial Protection Board has been upheld, but I'm hoping it doesn't get in the way of our plans, Mary, to go public with Mary Trump Media, MTM. We're going to be trading that pretty soon.
Well, we'll pay our taxes, so it'll be fine.
I'm really hoping that doesn't end it, folks. Send us your money now.
Hey, wait a second. Don't violate the quiet period. I teach securities regulation. That's not an announcement. Shit.
This is why I'm here. I was promised shares. And MTM Productions, not to be confused with Mary Taylor Moore Productions, which is a whole different thing, but this is MTM.
Yeah, a little bit different.
So we're
gunning for Mary Taylor Moore.
Right next to the DJT ticker symbol, we're going to have MTM Media. It's going to be big. It's going to be huge. Look, these Supreme Court geniuses between Dahlia and Jen. What can I add to that? I can't applaud Norm enough, though, for bringing up that case by Daniel Perry. I wrote about it last year for CNN, and not to get into details of it, other than the fact that this guy, Daniel Perry, went out hunting that night for Black Lives Matter protesters. He was convicted by the jury. They rejected his self-defense argument. They rejected it. But because Tucker Carlson, to remind you, this is what happened. Tucker Carlson went on his show and said, hey, this guy's great. He's killing Black Lives Matter protesters. And Tucker Klansman, being who he is, and then Abbott said, okay, I have to do something about it. Ronnie Jackson was on board in between drinks. I'm not even kidding. He's a congressman from Texas who's also a drunkard, who said, you got to pardon this guy. And to remind people, the year before, know how many people Greg Abbott pardoned? Two in the entire year. So this is one of them for this year, a guy who killed Black Lives Matter protester who was pushing his black girlfriend who was in a wheelchair because she was disabled. This is the guy who he shot, okay? So thank you, Norm, for bringing it up. This COVID is just, I'm glad it made you think of that case, and I'm glad that you're doing well. It's good to see everyone. Dahlia, you looks like a set for Church Lady behind you with the little thing from Saturday Night Live from I used to work at SNL, so I remember all the old episodes, and that's what that looks like. It's good to see. Wajahat's got the salute to Star Wars behind you, which is pretty cool.
Well, aren't we special?
That was a special thing here.
Well, and he's
Norm looks like you're sitting in the middle of a Wes Anderson set. It looks very Wes Anderson, like sort of something going on from.
But it's not symmetrical. There's a little bit behind him is a little bit off.
It's asymmetrical, yeah.
So it was awesome of Dean to take a break from his reporting for the Hollywood Reporter to come join us and critique our sets.
I'm going to go through everything. It's like a comedian making fun of the room. This is what we do. But I'm so glad that you brought everyone back together, even though I can say it for a short time because my show on Sirius XM, it's not live at 6, but I'm glad
because you work 22 hours a day. So
I do, and I'm tired. I interviewed Scaramucci today, who's very concerned there might be one cultist on the jury.
Oh no! Has he been in the courtroom and he saw somebody?
No, but he just fears that. And I'm like,
well,
yeah.
That's the only thing the mooch.
Yeah, I've been talking to people in the courtroom, and they've been watching the jury, and they don't get that sense. So I don't. I heard Mooch say the same thing, but I think he's just full, as we all are, that there may be someone stuck in there that'll give him a hung jury. But I think so far the narrative has been such. I don't know that they'd be able to vote that way. But nobody knows what a jury's going to do. Nobody. Well,
Donald's getting what he deserves: a fair trial, a fair conviction, a fair life in jail. That's what he deserves, and that's what he's.
That would be fair.
Inshallah.
I would argue that he's not getting a fair trial. No. Wait. He has not been sent to jail for violating his gag order 11 times. And he has how many defense attorneys that somebody else is paying millions of dollars to? So no, it is not a fair trial. He is getting so much more protection and deference than anybody else in the history of the American justice system. That's my
If
take
it
on
were
it.
any of us, well, you got a point there. If any of us had spoken out like he had, we'd be sitting in Rikers right about now.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the most they've threatened him with is putting him in a holding cell behind the courtroom for a few hours. So yeah, to your point, that's true.
And we wouldn't have been pissed off if the judge called our bluff about wanting to go to our kids' graduation, because we would really want to go to our kids' graduation.
And we probably wouldn't have a quorum of Congress members outside of the court after
Hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Zipping it.
Okay, so I am going to pivot. So unless anybody has anything else they want to say about SCOTUS, obviously this is Waj is next. This is why I'm pivoting, Tim.
I would like to say one more thing.
Sure,
about
absolutely.
And that
business.
is,
Here it comes.
we're getting, inundated even more with the utter corruption of Clarence Thomas. And Sheldon Whitehouse had a really powerful thread on Twitter pointing out the number of people in Congress and the executive branch who did what Clarence Thomas did, took gifts and trips and did not disclose them as required, and got, in some instances, jail sentences, but at least got prosecuted and got fined and community service and sometimes home detention. And I'd like to know where the Merrick Garland Justice Department is if, in fact, we have equal justice under the law, and his pledge that he would have neither fear nor favor about prosecuting people who violated the law. Clarence Thomas, open and shut, violated the law. Prosecute him.
That's the COVID talking, because Merrick Garland doesn't exist. Just
Maybe
so you know.
maybe Merrick Garland needs to get
Doesn't
COVID.
exist.
Who knows?
No,
But
I'm
it is.
saying.
I think it was Jen Rubin who pointed out this morning. It took about 30 seconds. Well, probably longer than 30 seconds. But Menendez in New Jersey, that trial has already started, and we're 3.5 years in from the insurrection. So yeah, I mean, that's something I want us to keep talking about, because along with this concept of one person being able to make sure democracy doesn't happen, cats are the best. What is your cat's name?
My cat, I don't know if you can see the little white ruffle. She's got a little white ruffle collar. She's Arby for RBG. And I'm just going to say here, so everybody knows, she was born almost immediately after Justice Ginsburg died. And so it is quite manifestly true that she is the justice in feline form.
That's amazing. My cat, I have to say, black with a little white here.
It's a whole different show.
So yeah, I know. It's like we're expanding our purview. But Waj, I want to get to you, because one of the people I think about when I think about this concept of one person either destroying democracy like Alien Cannon, or Merrick Garland not seeming to care, or being the bulwark against it. When there was a time when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still in the Supreme Court, and everybody's like, we need to wrap her in bubble wrap, so everything doesn't go to hell. It's like, that's not how it should have to. That's not how this should work. One person shouldn't be the only thing standing between us and fascist oblivion. And yet, Waj, that seems to be time after time after time. It's one person, and more often than not, it's the wrong one.
First and foremost, congratulations on finally launching Mary Trump Media. We want to make you famouser and give you FU money and then F me money. And it's great that you brought along cats, Arabs, Jews, Brian, antiquated SNL pop cultural references, a clean-shaven Wajhatali because you accidentally used the wrong razor. So this is all for you, Mary. But I think, everything that everyone's mentioned, right? Everyone sits there and says, oh, we went on tangents. It's all connected to me. And, I'm sitting there listening to Norm and Brian and Dean and Dahlia and Jen. And what we're facing is, if we have to give an analogy, is there's this church in America of white Christian nationalism. And that church of white Christian nationalism is playing for all the marbles.
Yeah.
And it has vassals and it has agents willing to do its bidding. It's the Supreme Court, which is inundated with right-wing extremists paid off by right-wing money, who will use the Constitution as Plato, as Dahlia said, originalism when they want something for themselves, or when they want to keep something and they'll ignore it. For example, women's rights, it's not enumerated. Loving v. Virginia, Clarence Thomas didn't mention it, maybe because he's married to a white woman, but I digress. Right? State Supreme Courts, let's go back to the 19th century. Governors will pardon who we want to pardon. Stochastic terrorism when it's necessary. And oh yes, their greatest avatar, Donald Trump. To the point where the party of family values and Christianity has no problem right now defending a man who has committed adultery with an adult film star, and according to the facts, the evidence, the documents, engaged in illegal conduct, campaigns finance violations to protect himself during a 2016 election, which he barely won by the skin of his teeth. So if people knew about this, I think Clinton would have won. But yet all these folks, Mary, are out like minions. And this is what I want to focus on when it comes to the case. And this is what, I tweeted, and I think you shared this yesterday on Mehdi Hassan's channel, Zateo. What really disturbed both of us is the fact that the trials is disturbing us because of the double standards. Any other person, we would be in jail right now. Simple. What's really disturbing, though, is the complicity of the entirety of the GOP. And this is why I think more people like you have to use the F word, fascist. It's a fascist movement. Norm just mentioned 45 minutes ago, Greg Abbott pardoned a man who openly talked about killing blacks and Muslims and went and did it. Pardoned. All right. Violent insurrection. Supreme Court. Look what's happening right now today. This man, Donald Trump, is on trial. He has violated his gag order numerous times. So he has unleashed his surrogates, who are elected officials, nearly a dozen, who, like minions, dressed in his cheap white shirt, white jacket, red tie, went out and, as his avatars, smeared the case, smeared prosecution, smeared Judge Merchant, his daughter, and did everything that he can't do. Furthermore, they took time away from their constituents, because they actually have jobs, and decided that this is not only their job, Mary, but their constituents want them to do this, to be the cult of Trump and Trumpism. And so to answer your question and to tie it all together with also Merrick Garland, my frequent lament on your show is Democrats bring a pencil to a knife fight, Republicans bring a bazooka. Case in point, Merrick Garland. Case in point, the lack of messaging the last 2 weeks during this trial from Democrats. When they go low, we go high. Why? They're taking this opportunity to throw sand in the gears. You can go there every single day as a Democrat surrogate, and on television, forget television, Mary, as a Democrat surrogate, stand outside the trial and connect the dots for people as to why you should care about this trial and why this is an example of Trump's criminality and lack of care and concern for the Constitution and rule of law. Nothing. And so I'm sitting here thinking that even if Biden barely wins, and we don't know, what we're seeing, and I think what you're getting at, is a further emboldened, violent, radicalized GOP versus a more weakened, fractured Democrat that puts up lukewarm, milquetoast Merrick Garlands who care more about civility and process than fighting for democracy. Right.
And Waj, everybody's muted because somebody had a siren in the background. So just be aware. You have control over your mute buttons, but just in case,
okay, I'll clap.
It was somebody in New York. It was somebody in New York City, but I'm not mentioning any names.
Me.
All of those are such good points, and this is just reminding me just how many fronts this battle is being fought on, and or not fought on, and fronts that we need to join in. So like the idea that Democrats should show up on the court, yes, absolutely they should. And I always thought, like, I believe that we should go high, but this is what I mean. That means don't cheat, lie, and steal. I am more than willing, though, to get down in the mud and pummel you, theoretically speaking,
with the facts.
if I'm fighting for democracy and you're fighting to turn this place into a fascist state, I will do whatever I have to do, as long as I'm not doing anything without integrity, I guess is how
Mary,
I put
can
it.
I just sorry, go ahead.
Let me go to Brian because
Okay, no problem.
and then John,
First
I
of
know
all,
you wanted to say something about Merrick Garland.
I want to
Betty.
thank everybody for being here. This is so much fun to get back together with everybody, and I love you all, and I've missed you.
I missed all of you too.
Let me just say the problem starts at the top. For 3 years, and I've preached this for a while. It's got it. Where is the James Carville's of the Democratic Party? Why is the president of the United States avoiding? I mean, I understand his, but I'm talking to someone who's ready to mix it up with the Republicans. Where is that person? Why aren't we having that? Why don't we see more of that? And it starts at the top. The president of the United States won't interact with the press too much. Now, that's because sometimes we ask really stupid questions. Like there was a person sitting in the briefing room asking Karine Jean-Pierre, why do we have to produce our own steel in the United States when somebody else will do it for us? I mean, manufacturing is key to national defense, but never mind that. We are stupid. But at the same point in time, his words, he doesn't stage himself well. He doesn't get out well. The people that work in his communication staff are horrid. And for the love of God, they've got the facts on their side. Donald Trump is great at selling an appearance, and you can't get President Biden to sell reality. And he's done some really great things, but you won't know it and you can't hear it. And that filters down. You've got minions, 4 people dressed like the 4 Stooges showing up at court. And why aren't members of Congress on the Democratic side calling him out for that stupidity? Because I guarantee you one thing, Speaker Mike Johnson, if Donald Trump goes down, Mike Johnson will flush him and move on. He's already proved that he will work with the Democrats to save his own butt. So he's only there because he sees that he could probably show up there and get A, money, or B, influence, and CEOs Donald Trump something. So that's why he's there. As soon as Trump's gone, he's gone. The fact of the matter is, until the Democrats get more interactive and more aggressive about selling their points, they're going to go down. And it's frightening to me because it reminds me either like Hubert Humphrey in '68 before Nixon, because he didn't come out fast enough against the Vietnam policy of his predecessor, the president of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson, or it looks like 80 again with Jimmy Carter against, Ronald Reagan. The fact is, those were 2 decent people, but you got to be more than decent. You got to give people a reason to vote for you, and they aren't. And here's the bottom line with the evangelicals that watch. Unfortunately, I've spent the last 2 months traveling over 15 states covering this election campaign. And the evangelicals, without a doubt, don't care whether Donald Trump is a fig Newton or Satan himself. Nope. What they believe is that Donald Trump is going to bring about the rapture, and they're going to heaven and we're stuck here. And all I can say is be gone with you and let the rest of us make some decisions about living here on earth. They will vote for Donald. They are the last hardcore members of the Donald Trump MAGA coalition. And if you don't have something to gain from Donald Trump, then you're one of those people. And they just don't care. And that's the frightening part. You got to get people up in arms to vote. And I say this too often. Look, I don't care how you vote. Just get involved and vote. And for the love of God, volunteer at the local election level and be involved with counting them, because we're going to get screwed if you don't.
I care how you vote. Care how you vote. No, that's okay. We're here. We're here to rant.
I'm here to rant.
But I think it is really important to point out that there is no point in trying to have a discussion or change anybody's mind if they are Christian nationalists, because they will always say God chose him. He is an imperfect vessel, but he's going to deliver us. Blah blah blah. Okay,
I found one way.
You cannot have. There's okay. What?
Well,
there's no way.
I talked to this woman in Virginia. Now, this is a true story, and I think there are plenty of people like her. I think
we don't have a half hour for your story.
This will be a 2-minute story tops. So this woman, and she's voted Republican her entire life until 4 election cycles ago. She voted Democrat down ballot for a transgender female, Danica Rome, for the State House. Why? Because Danica Rome, while her MAGA opponent was telling everyone she was a demon, she said she was going to fix Route 28. And so they took her, she voted for her because I use that road every day. Gosh darn it, if she fixes it, I want her. So she voted for her. She said
she's not a Christian nationalist then.
She is.
I'm sorry.
She is. But she says she will not vote for Donald Trump again this time. Doesn't mean she's going to vote for Biden. But she said her and her husband found that they voted for Danica for the same reason, and that they are not telling people that they're not voting for Trump because they're afraid they'll lose what few friends they have left in church, those Christian nationalists. So I think there are some people who may not vote Biden, but definitely won't vote Trump.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that that's great. We need more of those people. I just don't think it's worth the effort to try to convince a group that is willing to destroy American democracy, because they don't think America is a democracy. They already think that it's based on biblical teachings and stuff like that. So, Jen, I know you wanted to say something about Merrick Garland, and then Norm, you want to talk about Dick Durbin. Boy, there's a lot to say about Dick Durbin. But I just want to say really quickly that, in talking to you guys, I'm realizing how much there is that we need to stay on top of and keep everybody else on top of. So we're not going to fit it all in today, but Project 2025, white evangelical Christian nationalism, the horrors of the Dobbs decision, the list is very long. We are going to get to all of it, and I think sometimes we're just going to have shows dedicated to one thing. We'll have roundtables with experts to come in and help us sift through some things, and I think we should do a live reading of Project 2025. Why not?
That's brilliant.
Make an audio, put it up on Audible
with puppets or no?
With cats and dogs.
Yes.
You know
Cats
what?
and dogs.
Both of my cats will not be available. That is just
Mary. Can I say
not their
just?
job.
I want to give a shout out for just a second. Jasmine Crockett did this yesterday.
She's awesome.
She did this yesterday, and there's a video of it, and she literally read what the Project 2025 is going to do. It took 30 seconds. If Democrats did that every day.
Yep. In front of the courtroom in New York City. Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, this goes to so much of what we're all talking about, but the bottom line is that, bringing a pencil to a knife fight and they're bringing a bazooka issue around Merrick Garland. If you live your life, and this isn't just him, but a lot of people who identify as Democratic officials, elected or otherwise, if you live your life trying to avoid criticism, and that is how you have risen the rank either in the corporate world or in politics, then you are not going to be a leader because you're going to constantly moderate. I'm not saying you have to be an extremist, but you're not going to fight. You're not going to piss people off. You're not going to rock a boat. And now look what's happening to Merrick Garland. Because wait, before I say the new news, anyone who's read my columns in the Washington Monthly know that I think day one, Merrick Garland should have appointed a special counsel and et cetera, to deal with all of Donald Trump's alleged crimes. But anyway, the bottom line is this man who is so afraid of being called political or not even-handed, well, guess what? The flippin', barely Republican-controlled House is still going to try to hold him in contempt. So they're going to always accuse you of playing politics. So why don't you confront it? When people are accusing Biden of being somehow behind the trial in New York, so probably some bat signals going out saying Democrats don't even talk about it because the Republicans will say we're being political. Well, fuck that. This is a fucking issue of his ability to serve, and it is how he cheated in the election, and it is what he is doing as political. So I love what Brian is saying. Why the hell aren't there Democrats out there? We cannot let the smartest guys and gals in the room who, went through the same kind of systems that a lot of us did, who have learned they don't want to be looked at, or criticized, and they're all marching to these mealy-mouthed orders. And this is why we lose, because we're not holding our ground. We're not speaking our truth. We're just trying to avoid being criticized.
Yeah. Norm?
So, just to follow a little bit, Garland, whom I know, and he's been a friend for a long time. I love him as a person. He's had one goal, which is to restore the legitimacy of the Justice Department, and in the process has restored illegitimacy to the Justice Department. You pick a Robert Hur to be a special counsel, and you reap a really bad outcome. You indict Henry Cuellar, appropriately it appears, for bribery, but don't even touch the multiple Republicans who were neck deep or eye deep in an insurrection. Not one of them. And it's really dismaying because that's not doing what he wanted to do. And it's too late, I'm afraid, to do anything about that. Now, Dick
it's
Durbin.
not justice. It's not justice, Norm. If you're going to, what bothers me about Democrats is, to Mary's point, you don't have to be crooked like them, but you sure should call it out. And if you're going to get down in the sewer, beat them up for it. And Merrick Garland will call out Democrats because he knows that the Democrats will accept justice. He doesn't call out the Republicans because he knows that he will end up in a sewage hole.
Okay, but he's going to end up there anyway, right?
Anyway, he's right. He's already there.
Okay, Brian, Norm is going to talk now.
I'm sorry.
Let's be clear. It's not just Merrick Garland. There's a whole team at the Justice Department. There are a lot of career people. He's turned to them. A lot of them have undermined the ability to move forward as well. But, he's at the top. Now, Dick Durbin, also somebody I've known for decades, a wonderful person, smart as could be, but mired in a belief about a Senate that has long disappeared. And now this discussion of bringing back the blue slip for circuit court judges, which he has apparently discussed with both Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham. And I just want to give a capsule history of this. This is, for those who don't know, it's really a convention in the Senate that's been around for a very long time, that senators from a state where judicial nominees come forward, mostly it's been district court judges, but it's also been circuit court judges, can block the confirmation. And it's been used in the past appropriately to make an administration come to senators and explain why they're picking these people. It's also resulted in many good judicial nominees where senators have created independent commissions in their states to make recommendations. When Pat Leahy was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, he kept the blue slip despite Republicans abusing it over and over, with the idea that if we do away with it, then it will create violence and they'll do away with it and I'll keep it, so they will. And then as soon as there was a roadblock, Grassley blew up that blue slip. Now, basically, Durbin is saying, hey, we don't know who will win the next election, so let's do this. There is zero chance that if Donald Trump got elected, Republicans in the Senate would keep this in place. The first Democrat who blocked one of Trump's lunatic nominees for an appeals court, there would go the blue slip. So this is not bringing a pencil, it's bringing an eraser to a gunfight. And while they have the bazooka. And
nice
it's
callback,
just,
Norm.
the dismay in Democrats in believing that norms apply across the board, believing in the integrity of a group of people who have no integrity, gets us down another rat hole.
Yeah, the only norm that applies is you, Norm. I mean, the rest of the norms, they are so.
This is why you have your own media network. That's why you get paid the big money.
Well, I'm glad we got that laugh because I think Dahlia has bad news for us. So
I want to make one wonky point following up on what Norm said, and then I want to just make a joke. And I don't even know, like, with that kind of like overpromise, the joke's not going to be funny. But I do want to make one point about what's coming at the Supreme Court, because what Norm is saying about judges and how we seat judges and who gets seated and what check we have on seating insane people is playing out at the Fifth Circuit. And every single case, including the CFPB case that came down this morning that everyone's like, oh, look at moderate Clarence Thomas, like look at moderate, John Roberts. Every case that comes down that is batshit crazy is because judges on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, who, by the way, are all auditioning to be on the Supreme Court because they're all like, I'm more conservative than Sam Alito. I'm more conservative than Clarence Thomas. They are literally like little kids in a playpen, like smearing the walls with feces, trying to get attention. Every crazy case that the court is hearing this term comes because that is a lawless circuit. Mary, you talked about the, giving Texas the authority to decide federal immigration policy. The bump stock ban comes out of Texas. The mifepristone case that seeks to invalidate one of the 2 abortion drugs nationwide comes out of the Fifth Circuit. These are all Fifth Circuit cases. So let's be super clear. When you see crazy people, it almost doesn't matter what the law of the land was. There were multiple appeals courts that had decided that the way that CFPB was funded was perfectly constitutional. But the Fifth Circuit was like, we don't care what they said. We've decided to just scupper the entire entity. So let's just be really clear that judges are the most important issue that nobody cares about until they do stuff that destabilizes all of democracy. And I really, really think, the blue slips is important, but every single piece of this, not paying attention to what Trump judges, and they are unerringly Trump judges, are doing right now, and that the court that's going to hand down decisions like today that are like, oh, look how reasoned and principled Clarence Thomas is. No, Clarence Thomas literally was just telling the Fifth Circuit, I get to be the craziest person in the room, not you. That's what that case is about. Drops mic. The only thing I want to say, unrelated to any of this, but it really occurred to me when Waj was talking, is that the entirety of the debate about who is sleepier, Joe Biden or Donald Trump, is such an amazing, amazing metaphor for an electorate that is fast asleep. It's unbelievable. This election is going to be decided by people who think that one guy or the other is too snoozy. And meanwhile, we are excited about like a trial that is full of like one made for TV character after another, while democracy itself is sliding away.
That's
and
Donald
to that
Trump's
and
life.
to that point, Dahlia, like this stuff about the trial that actually matters, we're being told by the corporate media is too boring. So we need to break it up with the tabloid stuff. And I think this all started when the major criterion for choosing a president wasn't who knows more, who's smarter than we are, who has the most experience as a civil servant. But no, who would you rather have a beer with? So we've gone from a drunk electorate who wants to go have beer with people you'll never have a beer with to the sleepy electorate who just can't seem to process its trauma enough to kind of get out of its own way. So yes, here we are. So Dahlia,
Thank you, Ronald Reagan.
Oh, great. And
that
Jen, you want
reminds
to
me,
say something? Go
sorry,
ahead.
one quick thing. What
Go
I
ahead.
meant to say when I was attacking Merrick Garland, criticizing him. Lifting up
Analyzing.
possibilities.
You were analyzing it very well, Jen.
When Mary was saying, how we chose presidents, let's think about FDR running for re-election. How he faced criticism. He said, I welcome their hatred.
Yep.
Hello. That's all I got.
Yeah. Wow, we are so far from that. And you know what's awesome? It's 5:20. We have not really talked about the trial yet. We've talked about what's happening outside of the trial, and we've talked about many other infinitely more important things than what happened in the courtroom today. I couldn't care less about Michael Cohen or whether he hawks t-shirts or I lie. I don't even care if, hang on one second. I don't even care if he lies, quite honestly. But I did want to, so the trial is important for the obvious reasons. We may have somebody who used to be in the Oval Office, be a convicted criminal while running for the presidency with the backing of 100% of the Republican Party. Wrap your head around that. And there's a 50-50 shot of his accomplishing that at this point, which is something we're all going to have to grapple with over the next 6 months because it kind of short circuits my brain. that we're here. It really does. So, just what is being exposed by this trial. And quite honestly, the one thing you can give Donald credit for is the extent to which he has been really good at exposing the weaknesses in our system and finding people who were more than willing to hop up and down on the joints, right? Brian, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, in regards to the trial, having been in close, I don't know how many people can claim it, and I don't know that I'm proud of claiming it, but I have spent and been in close quarters with both Cohen and Donald Trump.
My condolences.
Yeah, right. And but I'll say this: if it's a battle of wits, Donald Trump comes to this half-armed. He's not. He's a half-wit. And folks, Michael Cohen, having spent 6 months with him in writing a book, is many things. He is bombastic. He lied for Donald Trump. But in the 6 months, and I argued with him. I mean, I'll be honest with you, there was a couple of times I wanted to choke him. But at the end of the day, he was very good about making sure that what he put in that book was factual. And he tried very hard. Did he sin? Yeah, he sinned. And he was trying to make amends for it for his family and his kids. I'll take him at face value on that because I saw it outside of the scope of television. I saw it outside the scope of news. It was just him and his family. I get it. Yeah. Here's the point about Donald Trump, though. Donald Trump sees this week as everything in Donald Trump's world is in his head is a movie. So he sees this week as High Noon, and he's Gary Cooper, and he's not. This is actually the man who shot Liberty Valance, and Donald Trump is Liberty Valance. The guy doing the shooting, though, is not Cohen. It's Donald Trump's shadow in the background. Donald Trump is the instrument of his own problems, his own demise. All the crap that you see in that courtroom, and I mean, it's a circus. It's a cesspool circus. That's Donald Trump's life. He claims he hired the best and the brightest. He hired anybody who would lie for him, anybody who would cheat for him, anybody who would steal for him, and he comes back to get them when they come out and tell the truth about him. That's what I see out of that. And if the rest of it, to your point, Mary, doesn't matter. The facts will out.
But this is the thing, Brian.
I wish this were live. I wish this were on TV so people could see it.
That's another part of this. That's one thing Donald is not responsible for. There need to be cameras in courtroom. Yeah. It's absolutely absurd. But I have literally no interest in rehabilitating Michael Cohen in any way, shape, or form. But I just want to go around and then, Waj, I know you have a couple things you wanted to say, but just a really quick question about Michael Cohen, simply because so much focus has been on him and his truthfulness. Mehdi Hassan asked me, do you think that Michael Cohen is coming across as a credible witness to the jury? And I answered the question in my way, and I'll tell you what that answer was after you guys answer that question. Jen, do you think Michael Cohen came across credibly to the jury?
Caveat that I'm neither the jury nor, because there's no cameras or audio tape in the courtroom.
Thank you for that.
So, but
let's say if you were on the jury.
Hold on. I have actual evidence. Just like Brian, having spent some time with Michael Cohen has zoomed into my white collar crime classroom. So some of what, and I've also been on as someone who went to prison for white collar crime, and could talk about Otisville. I mean, this was actually really invaluable. I wanted to know about, do they really have Twizzlers in the commissary and such. But the reality here is that, unlike some of the talking heads on television, I've seen Michael when he's not boisterous and blustering on the podcast.
Yeah.
He actually answered questions my students asked him, and he came across the exact way he is coming across on the stand. And these people who on MSNBC or CNN who are saying, this is a new Michael Cohen. It's like, no, this is the way he was with my students. And my students, it was interesting. After he left, my students, we talked about what part did you believe, what part didn't you? And, the bottom line is they think, the guy has lied and he's cheated and he's not taking responsibility for some of the stuff he's done. But they fully believed that he decided to come clean for the reasons he said, which is, because I said to him, if Donald Trump had not paid your legal expenses, would you have flipped? And he said, no, I don't think so.
Yep.
So when
Okay.
he said that to my students, they were like, and I was like, okay, this is credible. And he also, he talked about being under like the last minute, you do not plead to this, we're going to indict your wife. And he had to, if you've been doing some hustling and some cheating your whole life, you better fucking own it and plead guilty right then and not drag your wife into it. And that's what he did. So
Okay.
I think my answer is I think he's coming across as
I
very
agree with you,
credible.
Jen.
Okay, I kind of thank you for the background and the local color, but I kind of just wanted a yes or no answer. So everybody else has to give me a yes or no answer, right?
Yes, without a doubt, and
That's
for the reasons that Jen
more than
said,
a yes. Oh, God,
and for the reasons that Jen said, yeah,
I'm
I find
losing
him credible.
control of the group.
It's your room, love.
Dahlia.
Yeah, I'm not watching. I'm
Oh,
not.
that's right.
I'm just not paying attention and enjoying thoroughly not paying attention.
That I am quite. I'm not a jealous person until now. Norm.
Yes, because of the documentary evidence that backs up what he says. You can question his credibility, but he's got the goods, tapes, documents. That's what makes it work.
Waj.
See.
Yeah. Actually, that was my answer. I said it's irrelevant. I don't care if he's credible. I don't even care if he's lying. There's documentary evidence for everything he's alleging. Almost not everything, but the vast majority of what he's alleging. There is documentary evidence. Although, to Jen's point, I think it does matter when the defense's strategy is to rattle him and try to get him, catch him in lies, and he's not going there. So
Can I ask a question, Mary?
Not about Michael Cohen. No.
I want to ask because Jen might know this. His attorneys, Donald Trump's attorneys, are former prosecutors who have. This is only
Some of them.
his second case as a defense attorney. Sometimes I think what I've heard, and again, we're all doing this, secondhand information because we haven't seen it ourselves. But the reporting and the transcripts that I've seen, it almost appears like he is risking alienating that jury by acting like a prosecutor instead of a defense attorney.
Yeah, I mean,
is that a fair?
Chuck Rosenberg, I heard talk about this because he's a former prosecutor, and he said prosecutors don't often get that kind of opportunity to cross-examine because often the defense doesn't take the stand. They're mostly directing. So yes.
Okay. And listen, there will be more opportunities. We have closing statements. We have jury watch for the verdict. And
then hopefully sentencing afterwards.
Well, sentencing for sure. And we better make the most of it because it will be the last criminal trial before the election because we are broken. Watch a couple things you want to talk about.
Yeah, I know we're
Before
wrapping
we
up,
okay.
and I wanted to give two pop cultural references for the children who do not understand The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance and High Noon, which are excellent references.
Bring us to the 20th
excellent
century.
references, but I'm going to use it to connect the dots about some of the themes I've seen brought up. The first one is the Republican Party in its entirety, like a really helpful Bond villain, is telling you the entire plot. They've given you the blueprint. I want to remind some people that his attorney, Trump's attorney in front of the Supreme Court, believes that the president of the United States could be immune from potentially assassinating rivals, openly admitting it. And then when it comes to Project 2025, I want to practice what I preach because we assume people know, but just give me 1 second. Project 2025 is the right-wing blueprint for the next Republican president. It was funded in part by the Heritage Foundation, the Koch brothers, a vast secretive dark money network, and has recruited at least 80 far-right organizations to stamp on it. It wants to, quote, defund the Department of Justice, dismantle the FBI, break up the Department of Homeland Security, eliminate the Departments of Education and Commerce, attack Medicare, Social Security, and take away women's rights. It's all there. That's the first analogy I want to give. They're telling you exactly what they want to do. Why haven't we taken advantage of it? Mary, I think that's a failure, I'm sorry, of Democrats. You have to tell people a story. The second pop culture analogy to connect the dots. I've used this before. Peanuts. Charlie Brown, Thanksgiving episodes, has the football. Lucy, this time, do you promise not to pick up the football? I won't, Charlie Brown. What does she do? Picks up the football, we all fall down. We are the majority, and the majority of institutions, and I'll give you two quick examples. MSNBC, NBC, again wants to court the right wing, gives $300,000 to Rama Romney McDaniels, right?
Yeah.
Does it win over the right wing? No. Public education.
Does it alienate the rest of us?
Yes. Here's another example. They get the scalp. That's the word that Christopher Rufo and Elise Stefanik used. They got the, quote, scalp of Claudine Gay of Harvard. So all these other folks, like the president of Columbia, said, if we play along, they'll love us. Has it worked out? No. And to quote Timothy Snyder, who wrote On Tyranny, the first step is obeying in advance. And you're seeing every institution obey in advance, assuming they will treat us well. They won't.
Yeah, first of all, you're spot on with all of that. And secondly, maybe more importantly, Dahlia, I need a GIF of that. Whatever. Yes, I need a GIF of Dahlia as Lucy.
Pulling away the football.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I believe, where our real work lies. It's not convincing people who are thinking about voting for Donald for the third time. It's not about arguing, debating with white evangelical Christian nationalists, or trying to sway people who believe that Project 2025 is a good idea, or that the president of the United States, as long as he's a Republican named Donald Trump, should be able to assassinate his political rivals. Yes, there are some people in the middle-ish, I guess, still, maybe, and we shouldn't ignore them. But I think our most important work, both in the short term and the long term, is to get Democrats to have a spine to, in the short term, recognize the threat, and in the long term, understand that the most important work they can do is set up the structure for creating the kind of multicultural democracy we've never had and desperately need. So all of you are instrumental in that fight. I don't say this enough. I am honored that you're here. I am grateful beyond expression that you are my friends and that we're in this together. So we will. I seriously, I feel very happy right now, even though most of what we talked about was terrifying. So we are going to be here. Some combination of the nerds will be here every Tuesday and Thursday at the Married Trump Media channel at 12 noon Eastern. So until then, Dean Obadala Gentile, Brian Karam, Dahlia Lithwick, Norm Ornstein, Waj Ali, my friends, thank you so much. And everybody who was here to join us for this launch, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's free, and you'll just be alerted for all the new shows coming up. We have so much amazing content planned for you, and we will keep you apprised. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind, and we will see you next week.